Hi, I'm Lisa Daly, and I'm here to talk about the Fairhaven High School mathematics. So welcome everyone, and I'm just going to kind of go through my slides, talk a little bit, see if anybody has any questions. We'll go from there. So why is my shared screen? There we go. I was like, it's not working. All right, so the offerings that we're going to have at Fairhaven are Algebra 1, which many of them have already taken, and it can be taken in 1 year or 2 years. Geometry, Algebra 2 with trig topics. This one can also be taken in 1 or 2 years based on how fast the student wants to move through the Algebra 2. So we don't want anyone to feel like they're being pushed too fast. But we, of course, don't want to hold back anyone who's ready to move at that quicker pace. And then pre-calculus we'll be offering, and I'll talk about calculus a little bit more in another slide. And then we also will have a financial literacy class available to these students. So I'm going to show you a little bit about what some of the curriculum is in, a little bit the farther along classes, because most of the people who come to the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade will have already finished Algebra 1 and geometry. But I wanted to put them on there just in case anyone has not finished those kind of topics. So our Algebra 2 with trig topics, we're sort of going to be working on a trimester basis. So as you'll see, I've broken it out into the different trimesters with sort of our topics that we'll be covering. So when we start the year, it'll be with linear equations and inequalities, which is something that will not be entirely new to them, as well as functions and relations. The Cartesian and coordinate systems, that's fancy words for graphing. So we'll be doing some more graphing, sequences, and we'll be doing both arithmetic, geometric sequences. We'll probably also work with exponential sequences. And then we will begin working with matrices. And then semester 2, we have vectors, polynomials, factoring and solving by factorization. Parts of that they will be familiar with, and parts of it will be new. And then that exponential and exponents, and then radical expressions and equations. And then we'll be solving quadratic equations, which they've done in Algebra 1, but we'll be doing that in a new way, and we'll be adding on to it. As most of the students know, algebra is sort of cyclical of we learn something, and then we pick it up again later and we add on to it. And sometimes we go back and pick up something else and then we add on to it, so that it's kind of this ever-moving spiral of skills. And then when we get into the third trimester, oops, how do I go back? Ah, there we go, sorry. Doing some data analysis, some sets, some logarithms, conic sections, trigonometry, and then the introduction into the unit circle, which is the beginning of unit circles are for pre-calculus and calculus. And they'll be working some on the unit circle. The pre-calculus, it looks like it's less things. It just has to do with how much goes under each one of these. But the first trimesters is about limits and continuity, derivatives, and the chain rule, and the application of derivatives. In the second trimester, it's all about integrals and the applications of integrals. And then the third trimester, again, the sequences and series, but those become much more difficult. Special series, the Taylor series, and then how to use matrices within systems. So you'll see even some of these you see are things that they used in Algebra 2. They're picking up again, and they're adding on to and learning how to use these in a more complex way. Then I talked a little bit about the financial literacy class for those. It's offered in a variety of ways. If they want to take that along with another math class, if they are, maybe they don't want to take calculus. Maybe they, after pre-calculus, they are fine with financial literacy. So it just depends on where they're headed after the Fairhaven program. Are they going to college? Are they not going to college? Are they going to do a trade school? What's going to be of most use to them? Do they want to keep going with the math because that's going to be big in what they want to major in? Of course, I think financial literacy is important to everyone. But the first trimester is all about savings and investing, checkings and savings accounts. How do bonds work? How do CDs work? How do various different kinds of retirement accounts work, whether it's something that's through a work or on your own through IRAs or Roth IRAs. What's the difference between those? Social Security, how does that work, even though it's so far off in their future? And then the stock market, how does investing in the stock market work? And I didn't put on mutual funds and things, but all of those kinds of things are all in that first trimester. The second trimester, loans and credit. What happens when I use a credit card? What happens when I want to take out a mortgage on my house to buy a house? How do loans work if I'm going to use them for college? How does that loan work? How do I repay it? What's the interest rate? How does those interest rates work? Oh, wait, now I need to buy a car and I need a car loan. How many loans am I going to have? And what does the credit score do? And why is it important? And then the all-important budgeting. Butler students, some of them are already familiar with budgeting on a more pretend scale. This will be more realistic scales of budgeting and actually adding in some of these other things of what are you doing? What are you honestly going to be doing about saving? How much can you honestly spend on things? What do things actually cost if I want to live in this area? And those kinds of things, and setting up a very realistic budget for themselves. Even as high schoolers, what's a realistic budget as a high schooler? Do you have a part-time job? Do you not have a part-time job? What are your parents asking for you to pay and contribute to? And those kinds of things. And then the third trimester kind of jumps into probability and talks of, like, we talked about that stock market. Well, where does chance play into the stock market? And learning some of the probability that goes into those things. Insurances too. Do I want a higher deductible on my car? Do I want a lower deductible? How is that going to change? Am I taking chances with I won't get in a car accident? Oh, and I see a spelling error. I'll have to fix that. It should say business startup. Maybe some of the people are thinking they want to be entrepreneurs and go out on their own. What kinds of things do you need to think about if you wanted to start a business? What kind of costs are included in those? How do you go about doing that? That might lead back to the loans. When you learned about loans, how much money is it going to take for a startup? Am I going to need, do I have that money just lying around? Maybe I do. If not, am I going to get a loan? What are they going to look at if I go for a business startup loan? Do I have everything written out for my business startup, or is it just something in my brain that I actually have to say, no, I need to put this down on paper. I need to have a plan, right? And how do I write this business plan? Because that's what they're going to need if they're going into a bank for a loan. All right. So all of these kinds of things of what do you need to know to adult in life? Okay. And I said I would talk a little bit about this, but we have various opportunities at Fairhaven. We'll be prepping them if they are interested in AP exams for calculus A, B, and statistics. We also will be offering, if we jump down a little bit, dual enrollment at Montgomery College if they want college credit for calculus and statistics. That will be available to them as well, and that way they can get the college credit for those. I did a lot of research, and taking calculus at the high school level, while you can get AP exam credits for it, the majority of students, if they take an AP exam for calculus, still end up being required to take calculus in college. So our general thoughts are, if you're going to want to take calculus, go ahead and take it at Montgomery College and get the college credit for it. About the only time that might not count towards your calculus is if you're going to be an engineering major, because engineering programs are going to require a specific engineering calculus that is very specialized to the engineering program. But for the general public that's not engineering, if you take a college level calculus, that's going to count for your college calculus. Whereas a lot of them, even if you've taken that calculus AB exam and gotten that 4 or 5, a lot of colleges are still saying you have to take it again. We'll be prepping for the SAT and ACT, and that's not just in math, that's across the board in English as well. They'll be taking practice exams with us, and we'll be helping them work through best practice for those. SAT, I'm positive of, I'm not sure about the ACT, maybe Emma knows, but I know the SAT is going online. And so we'll be prepping them for that too. Most of our students haven't taken a standardized test online, but that's becoming more and more common. And so we want to make sure that they're prepped for that kind of thing, because even in colleges, a lot of final exams now are given online and not in person. And so we want to make sure for those that are going to college that they're prepped and ready for that. Of how to take an online exam. What do you do when you have a question? How does that get handled? Because that's very different than when you're in a class and you have a question, you raise your hand, teacher comes over, right? So when you're taking things online, what do you do when you have a question? And then I talked about the general business and life math concepts that I think are important for everybody, but are offered if students want to take that. And again, they could take that in conjunction with another math class if they want, or just as a math class 1 year, depending on where they see themselves as a math student and what's important to them moving forward. That's kind of math curriculum in a nutshell. There isn't, I don't want to say there isn't a lot to it, because there is a lot to it, but in terms of showing you the list of the classes and the curriculum, I tried to put it in topics that people would be able to understand without getting into the nitty-gritty of every single type of lesson that people would have. I do have a sample lesson of logarithms if anyone is interested in that. We'll be using textbooks as a guide, as well as Michael Waske has his programming goes, he has algebra and geometry, and his algebra is pretty comprehensive of going all the way through matrices and unit circles and things. So I'll be using a combination of things. It won't be just, here's your textbook, we're going to work our way through this textbook. It's similar to the way I do now. We do some things out of the textbook. We do some things from Michael Waske. We do some projects of various types. And so all those things will continue. So none of that is going to change. There will still be some projects. As they're taking Algebra 2 and such, though, we will do some quizzes and tests. And my philosophy behind that is building towards the SATs, so that they have sort of that background of, oh, it's a multiple choice. And seeing those multiple choices is helpful, I really feel, because then you're also seeing that those answers that are put there to throw you off on purpose, right? And what's the best strategy to work on those? And then what are some strategies to do when you come across something and you say to yourself, I don't remember this at all, right? Is there a strategy I can use that might help me work my way through that? Are there certain things I can always look for to at least narrow down my choices? And those kinds of things. So there will be a little bit more of the quizzes and tests in the high school, but we're still Montessori based, right? It's still the projects, and it's still the collaboration, and it's still the self-directed and the exploring on your own and exploring with others. But we'll throw some of those quizzes and tests in there just as we're practicing and getting ourselves ready for those SATs and ACTs for those who want to go to college and are going to need those kinds of things. So, but we will cover all the bases so that when you are applying to college, you've got all of the skills mastered that you need so that you can take either college level calculus or beyond, depending on what it is that you're majoring in or interested in your future. So does anybody have any questions, including Natasha and Emma? I'm happy to volley them all.
Yeah, I have a question, Lisa.
Yes.
So there are natural connections along the way with computer programming. Do you see any opportunities there? Or, I mean, I imagine that math curriculum these days just naturally leans that way for projects and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm hoping to be able to put a little bit of the computer programming into the project basis as we hit the topics that will sort of lean in that direction. And then I don't have a huge background in that, but I do have some connections. So I'm hoping if someone is super interested in programming, that we'll either be able to get them into some sort of internship with that or connections with people who will really be able to drive that forward for them. Because I know lots of people are leaning towards the computer programming and the coding as well.
I was just going to tag in here and basically add on top of that, yes, it's one of the things that we're looking at right now when you look at sort of like the holistic view of the entirety of the Fairhaven program is, you know, our college counselor has basically told us the kids need to have the big five, right? In order to get into college, they need math, they need science, they need history, they need English, and they need a foreign language, right? So we're prepared to deliver all of this to them, but what else are they doing, right? So where are their arts pieces? Where are their physical pieces? Where are some of their tech pieces, right? In terms of coding and computer science and that kind of stuff. So I'll just put out there, if anybody knows somebody who wants to help teach that at Butler Montessori to awesome high school kids, please reach out to me. We're still sort of like building our staff right now. But it's something that definitely has come up a lot in our conversations about how do we get them access to those skills before they might transition to college, where they want to specialize more deeply. So does that answer your question here?
Yeah, thanks. And then the financial literacy, I know that Montgomery County Public Schools have a curriculum on that. Is it kind of similar to that, or is it just an independent curriculum?
It's very similar. It follows a lot of the same program, same topics that they have. I feel like I have a couple more things in mind than they have in theirs. But it's if you pull theirs up, you'll see it's very similar. Whereas I'm not sure, I've honestly not looked at their algebra. Well, I looked at Montgomery College's algebra too, topic wise to see where it compared to mine. But I feel like when it comes to things like Algebra 2 and pre-calculus, it's sort of standard in terms of the topics that you have to get to say that you know Algebra 2, right? You can't just skip matrices and be like, I don't want to do that, right? It's a part of Algebra 2 is to understand the matrices, especially if you're going to go on to the pre-calculus and be able to manipulate them in the ways that they're going to do.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to add a couple points about testing. So to answer one of Lisa's questions, yes, you can take the ACT online now. Both, as I understand it, both the SAT and ACT are moving towards online testing. And to that end, our ninth years this year are going to take a mock PSAT that's going to be delivered fully digitally, because again, we're trying to get them used to this. And then they'll be able to see right now, like kind of just like going in cold, where are they scoring on this? And that will give them super valuable information that they need when they do take the PSAT next year. Because of course that can give you like national merit scholarships and things like that. It starts to matter a little bit more. And then that PSAT, of course, is preparation for the actual SAT, which is, you know, the thing that gets you into college. So all of this, we're sort of scaffolding this skill set for them so that they're never going into it feeling like they don't know what to expect. Something else that is new this year that Lisa and I have not actually had a chance to talk about yet is they do technically offer a pre-calculus AP exam. It's new. They used to only offer like A, B, B, C statistics, and then I think like computer science or something like that they file under math. I haven't done enough research on it to really know whether or not it's worth it for students to take the pre-calculus exam. Like, if they're just trying to graduate early from college and get an extra credit, maybe, but it feels to me like the AP the College Board just kind of wants your money. So we're going to weigh it and see whether or not we think that that's something the students really should be prepping for or not. And that's something our college consultant, of course, will weigh in on. We had a question come in. Oh, PC wants to know, will they also have a chance to do a mock ACT? Yes, I have been working with an organization called A+ Education, which does a lot of test prep things. So I asked them this year to get us the mock PSAT for the 9th years, but I also want, as we add students who are a little bit older, right, have them have a chance to do a mock SAT and ACT as well. You know, people say that you tend to like lean a little bit more towards an ACT versus an SAT. Both are fully accepted by colleges. But I think the best way to know that is to try both of them and see kind of where your scores land. And of course, the safest way to do that is to do it in a mock environment so that you don't feel the pressure quite the same way. So yes, that is something we will be doing.
I had a question about taking the calculus at MC. Is it still subjective to the college that you're going to, whether they'll accept that as a credit?
I can't make any promises, but usually classes taken at a junior college or a community college, however you want to refer to them, are usually accepted at four-year universities. The same way a lot of people will go to Montgomery College before they go to college, and if they finish their 2-year program with their AA, then when they go to the 4-year college, they only need 2 more years, right? It's not like they take 2 years and then have to take like 3 or 4 more, as long as they're taking a full class load, I should say, right? If you're going to Montgomery College and working and you're only taking, 2 classes at a time, then obviously you're not going to, after 2 years, have enough to count for 2 years worth of college credits. But it's more rare for them not to, as long as you score well, I should say, right? Because once you hit college level, grades do matter, unfortunately. And so if you don't get an A or a B, then they might not accept it, right? If you only get a C, they might say, no, I think with that kind of a grade, you need to take it again.
Just quickly on their website from MC, it says that credits that you earn at Montgomery College can be transferred to virtually any 4-year school, which, like Lisa said, is pretty true across the board from community colleges to 4-year institutions. I don't know enough about them when they say virtually any 4-year school. Are there exceptions to that? I don't know, but I I think they're pretty few and far between. Montgomery College is actually one of the best community colleges across the nation. So we are very lucky that we live here.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things that comes to mind is, again, that sort of, I always say it, but it's true, of if you take a general calculus at MC, but then you decide you want to be an engineering major, they might say, well, you have to take the basic engineering calculus, because that would be different than like gen ed calculus. I only know this from knowing lots of either adult engineers or students at college that are engineers, and the fact that when they talk to their non-engineering friends in calculus, that their classes are different. So that's it. One of the few times I could say something like, they might still give you credit for the general ed calculus, but they might say, okay, well, you get your credits for that, but you still have to take the engineering one.
And I think we've talked about this with AP exams, usually it's like a 4 or a 5 that you need in order to get credit for
Right.
it.
And I feel like those are more questionable than the MC classes. I feel like it says on their website, I feel like the vast majority of things coming from Montgomery College will be accepted way more readily than AP exams. I feel like there's a decent number of colleges. I wouldn't say it's the majority right now anyway, but there are definitely colleges out there that won't take AP credits.
And it depends on in what subject,
Right.
right?
Sometimes it depends on the subject again. That depends on the school, right? Every school can make up its own rules. But in general, you're pretty safe with the college level class.
And all of this, and we lay all of this out there for people to explore, right? Where it's like, when you are in high school and you're starting to think about what's coming after for you in terms of college, you have a lot of choices at this point. Would you like to take an AP exam and, see how you score and see whether or not that will transfer? Yes, maybe, right? Maybe you'd like to actually go to Montgomery College and take the course there because that's more of a college type of experience for you, right? As opposed to just taking an exam at the end of the year. Are you not that interested in that? I want to shout out all the kids that are like, I am happy to be where I am right now, right? That I do think in Montgomery County, we have this tendency to like push and push and push a little bit, but we know from Montessori that our children are where they are, right? And they want to be where they want to be. So we, as their guides, our job is to provide all of the opportunities available to them and guide them towards something that's going to make the most sense for them, right? We're not going to just drop them in the middle of the deep end and say swim, but we want them to really make a logical choice about what will help them meet their goals. So
yeah. And I was also going to add on to that oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. Oh, it'll come back in a minute.
This is what happens when teachers try to do something at 6:30.
That's true too. Oh, that's what I was going to say. We were talking about accepting AP classes and things. The other things, if students kind of have an idea of where they might like to go to college and they're already starting to scope out some of these schools, I know that they're all going to apply to multiple schools, but that's one of the things they could be shopping around for when they're on their sites of, oh, I really like these 5 schools. How many of them? Look around on their websites, send an email. Do you accept AP classes? But that's something the students can look up themselves too, right? As they're looking around at the schools of who accepts what and from where. And because there's also ways you can look up kind of average SAT scores at different schools and things like that. Are any of these things guarantees? Absolutely not. Right? We kind of joke about a lot of that stuff of we want them to be as well prepared as we can, whether they get into schools. You know, sometimes it's you get into one you never expected you would get into, and one you thought you were sure to get into, you didn't get into, and then you're like, wait, what? That doesn't seem to make sense. And you know, there's no real predictability, but they give you these kinds of things that you can look up and sort of try and say, where do I fit in on what they're saying is average for their school? Any other questions?
For those of you who arrived a little later or who just want to refresh, we'll share the recordings and Miss Daly slides probably in the next Butler Bulletin in April.
Okay, I was going to say I can also scroll back through a little bit for people who just kind of want to read it on their own for a minute, and they can take a look, and I'll kind of go backwards through it. And if it brings up a question while you're kind of reading through. And yes, I will fix my spelling error. I thought I looked through it multiple times. And this one was kind of at the beginning.
Should I talk about what's next?
Sure.
Okay,
You
so
want me to- I can unshare my screen if we want.
it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
Well, okay, actually, I had one more thing that I wanted to say about math, just really quickly, and then I'll talk about what's coming next, which is that we hear a lot from intermediate students and honestly from high school students as well. Why do I have to take math? I'm not going to study this. It doesn't apply in the real world. Like, this is
Yes,
just
it does.
a waste of my time. And well, you know, obviously financial literacy is really going to apply, but even in the calculus topics, it will. Oh, actually, I'm going to pause here because we have a question, which is, will Algebra 2 and pre-calculus be taught in the same year or two separate years?
They're two separate years. In fact, the Algebra 2 can be taken over 2 entire years if they want, instead of in one. But yes, the pre-calculus is a separate class than the Algebra 2.
Yeah, if you tried to do both in the same year,
There's too much to cover.
There's too much to cover, yeah, to do that.
So anybody who's taking geometry right now will take Algebra 2 next year. And it's kind of Algebra 2 with trig. And then some of the trig will carry over into the pre-calculus as well. But there's no way to do Algebra 2 and calculus at the same time.
So yeah, so what I wanted to say is that kids are often like, I'm never going to use this in the real world. Why should I have to do this? Well, other than the fact that they say if you want to go to college, you have to keep taking math, I want to remind all of them that math helps you train your brain, right? Even if you're not going to walk out into the world and become a mathematician, right? Which many of us do not. You know, we feel really strongly that it's about thinking logically and problem solving and actually doing some of those mental gymnastics in your brain, which grows your brain, right? It literally makes you smarter to do more math, right, Mrs. Daly?
Absolutely. And I keep telling them they'll be surprised what they'll use out of math in their life later. And also, yeah, it's about that training your brain to think about things differently. It's one of the reasons that we do math seminar in the 7th through 9th grade, is so that you can see there's more than one way to think about things. And that that's actually a really good thing, right? That different people can come up with different ideas. That's where how inventions get started, right? Is somebody who thought about something in a different way. Right. And then I was going to answer the question that came up of there may not be time for financial literacy. Financial literacy is one of those classes that they could take that with one of the other math classes that they can take together with something. You can't really take algebra 2 and pre-calculus at the same time because they build on one another. But the financial literacy you could take at the same time as like a pre-calculus class or something. Or if you're going to MC and taking calculus, you could be taking financial literacy at Fairhaven at the same time. They're not gonna like conflict with one another in the way that some of the other classes would.
Exactly what I was typing, was that exact
Oh.
response. Was like, you could take financial literacy consecutively with either algebra 2 or
Oh,
pre-calculus.
is that what you just answered? I didn't see.
Same brain. So yes, definitely. And we highly recommend it for any student, right? No matter where you are sort of in the cycle of like algebra, geometry, algebra 2, they should all take financial literacy at some point, right, in their high school years. So it doesn't matter if they take it as a 10th, 11th, or 12th year, they should all have it. That we feel really strongly about as Montessori education as an aid to life.
Yeah. It's amazing how many kids go out in the world and have no idea how to budget, how a credit card works. It reminds me of the old adage, because you know we're up there in age of what do you mean I'm out of money? I still have checks. Right? Nobody has checks anymore, but it's that same old adage, right? Like how does a credit card differ from a debit card and those kinds of things, of just making sure they understand what all of that is. And to me, credit cards and credit history and those kinds of things are important because it's going to affect their life if they don't have a good credit score and if they get themselves in credit card debt, because so much when you read all these reports about the huge percentage of people that are in credit card debt and how hard it is to get out of, because what those percentages are on those credit cards is enormous, right? If you've borrowed money and you're paying it back at 24%, like some credit cards charge, that's huge. So I think it's wise for everybody to learn a little bit about that, and also to see, you know, okay, you want this job that makes this money, but where does that money go and how fast does it go? Right? Of all the bills that you really do have to pay out of your paycheck, and not just what the government already took out.
I was going to add as well, one of the biggest places that the kids are going to really see this in action, it has to do with their own trips that they're going to be planning in the Fairhaven program. I'm so excited. I'm not going to have to plan trips anymore. Guess what? They're going to do it themselves. So they are really going to have to be looking at their budget and managing it and saying, we want to go to France. That's awesome. Well, do we actually have enough money to go to France? How much is everything going to cost? And I am going to hand it all over to them and be like, okay, if this is what you want to do, then we're going to have to look at these things and you guys are going to have to figure it out together, right? And figure out, can we actually do this? So that I am extremely excited about, for them to really take those financial literacy skills and put them to action on, I mean, well, a weekly basis, if you consider the farm market, but also on a yearly basis in some of these bigger ways. Okay, we should talk about what's coming next. So our next Coffee and Conversation series is actually on April 3rd, which is not that long from now. That's what I have on the calendar. And it's mine. I'm so excited. I've just seen everybody else go and I'm like, when is my turn going to be? So I am extremely jazzed about it. I will be talking about all of the humanities and language arts that we are going to be building on from the intermediate program into the high school level. I have so many ideas. I've actually been planning this for so long. You know, what are some of the ways that students are going to be bringing their literary analysis to the next level. What are some of the ways that we're going to continue some of their work with vocabulary and grammar, because that really preps them for the SAT. Looking at language and composition and rhetoric a little bit more deeply, as well as creative writing, because adolescents need to express themselves creatively. We know this from Montessori, right? So how do we provide these opportunities for them? And then looking at the history curriculum and saying, what are the places in the past and the present and the future, honestly, that they're interested in learning? How does that track towards something that they might be able to get some college credit for? We're always looking at, but looking very, very deeply at studies of people and places across time and space. So that is coming on April 3rd, 6 p.m. Be there or be square. I think the reason it's so early is because the intermediates are headed to Wyoming the following week. That's why. So yes, it's on April 3rd because we can't do it any later because the intermediates are extremely busy. So we hope that we'll see you there. And the last one, actually, I'll just do a little plug for this, is sometime in May. I think it's May 8th on the calendar right now. That's probably one of the most fun ones that we're going to do because it's about all of the experiential learning. So we get to tell you about their internships and their trips and their work study opportunities and all the really cool stuff that makes Butler Montessori amazing, in addition to all of our great academics, is going to come out in that last one. So, if you don't care about history and English, that's fine, but you definitely should come to the last one that we're going to do because it's really special. So that's all I have for tonight.